Since Brexit, I've decided to become more cosmopolitan and learn a second language. So I've decided to become fluent in English and Old English. And the upshot of this is that I get to understand field boundaries, parish boundaries, old charters, and most interesting of all, actually no, I think the land charters are the most interesting. But what is also interesting is the discovery of leechcraft. So there's two books that describe the work of Anglo-Saxon doctors, and it's not just your usual mix a few herbs here and there. It's also how to deal with elves, how to stop yourself being possessed by a dwarf, things like that. And it's a lot is said of, recreation of heathen pagan ideas from the Dark Ages, but very few people really refer to what we know the Old English actually thought about things. And that's the two books are the Lacnunga or Lacnuya and Lechcraft or something along those lines. And there's a couple of things. I think it's a lot to do with what I learnt about the Bronze Age arrow that I found, that I've been boring people to tears about ever since. My Bronze Age arrowhead was in the past called elf shot or elf arrow. Obviously it's a misnomer. It's Bronze Age. It's nothing to do with elves. The elves don't exist. But there are in the Lacnunga or I don't know how we're going to pronounce it. Let's call it the Lacnunga. There are there's a spell which people like Simon Roper, a charm. People like Simon Roper and Thingy Crawford have been going on about oot, little spear and all that sort of stuff. And they're talking about an elf spear hitting you and causing an illness, a stitch. Funnily enough, sort of 19th century vicars, when examining this stuff, didn't know what a stitch was, didn't know how to convert that into modern English. But anybody who's any English boy who's ever been on a long distance run knows exactly what a stitch is. So it's very instinctive to me understanding it. But that charm has been done to death. What I'm going to on the internet. So what I'm going to do is not elves, but dwarves, dwerg. And there's 3 or 4 spells, charms for how to deal with them. One of which is very, very interesting. The Lacnunga has this to say about dwarfs. Now, dwarfs don't infect you by firing arrows at you like the elves do. They possess you, they get inside you and cause diseases. And if you follow Jackson Crawford's YouTube channel, you'll see him describe what the Norse think of dwarves, elves as subcategories. Try and get beyond the J.R.R. Tolkien categories. They're all the same sort of thing, essentially. They're otherworldly beings, powerful and magical, but not quite gods. You could say dwarves are a subsection of, according to Jackson Crawford anyway, a sub clause of elf. They live in stones. They turn into animals, and certainly I don't know whether the Norse think they infect human beings, but the English did. The Old English, the Anglo-Saxons did. So anyway, this is what the basically the medical manual for Anglo-Saxons say. There's 3 different charms. The most important is number 7, and is entitled with dwerch, which means what to do with having a dwarf. And it goes Her kom ingangen in spider wicht, hafte him his Hangman on handa, kweeth that thu his hengest were, which basically means here comes along the being, the spider being. He has with him his web or net on hand. Quoth he, you are his stallion. So basically, a spider being. It goes on. The charm goes on, but the spider being, you summon him. He comes to you and drives you, uses you to get rid of the dwarf. There's 2 others. Now, what's interesting about number 7 is that some pagan practitioners have pointed out that this is very similar to what shaman do, but it's quite clear that's not the case. With this is a charm to get rid of a dwarf, not to go to the other world or transport yourself to find the runes or anything like that. It is a charm to get rid of a disease caused by an evil spirit. Right. Recipe 44, with dwerch. Writ this on long, the yamus with dwerch. So if you have a dwarf, write this along your arms, and it's plus T plus omega alpha. So it means that's a Christian influence on it. The Trinity and God, the omega and alpha. And there's while doing that, you should grind Cullandine with ale while singing Sanctus Macutus and Sancta Victorici. Again, that's a Christian influence, but this is an Anglo-Saxon document, so it's authentic. By the way, don't I'm just an idiot on the internet. Don't grind Cullandine with ale. Don't do it. Right, number 78, with dwerch. So all of these are with dwerch. So they've got 3 different spells for dealing with dwarfs. With thonner dwarf on twega of lerten writ. So that means with the dwarf on 3 what do you call it? 3 wafers, holy wafers, right, and it says it's written out the Balguta, but nobody knows what that means. But it sounds like gibberish. But that might give you an insight into. It's not particularly relevant on this walk, but it's just some stuff that you might be interested in. So the advantage of learning dead languages is you can go and see for yourself. So anyway, one more stop and then it's home time. This is Mudhole. The locals take great delight in pointing out this is called Mudhole because there's a house down the road called Mudhole Cottage, and the locals will remind. But yeah, so this field is called Mudhole. And it is where there's a Roman villa and what was described in 2019 as one of the most important, the important mosaic discovered in recent years. It is a beautiful 4th century. You can tell it's 4th century because of the Roman uniforms. And what's interesting about it for me is it's a return to classical pagan beliefs, because of course in I think it's 325 Constantine rules that the empire is now Christian. So there does seem to be, in the 300s in Britain at least, Britain does become a backwater in the sense that its armies start raging across, joining in the civil wars in Europe. Britain starts doing its own thing. It's attacked and starts to self-govern. There's rebellions and all sorts of stuff in the 300s. What's interesting is that pagan temples start being rebuilt in the 300s in Britain, several of them on top of hilltops and remote places like that. Special places that don't last for very long, 50, 100 years, and then disappear again. It does feel that Britain was going it alone, was trying to return. Well, I expect a lot of the ruling class in Rome, in the Roman Empire, was trying to return to an older form of religion. So we're seeing pagan influenced, properly pagan, mythical mosaic here. I'm not sure it's the most beautiful. It is beautiful, I love it. I'm not sure it's the most beautiful thing ever found. I mean, I particularly like Littlecote, and there's others. We do seem to be in a sort of, it's the art style of the later Roman period gets quite expressionist, less formal, less well drawn, if you care about that sort of thing. But nonetheless full of feeling and passion and quaint ideas and things like that. So it is very, very interesting. So anyway, yes, I just thought this villa here, it shows the break between, for me, archaeologists have shown that villas, Roman places, are on the edge of, on the boundary of Anglo-Saxon domains, and this one is too. It's right up against the parish boundary. It's well away from the village centre. It shows that break, the end of Roman Britain and Anglo-Saxon England, which is all very interesting. It saddens me. I would like to be able to show, and I think a lot of people would like to be able to show that continuity, but from Neolithic Britain right through to today, in our ideas and feeling and our principles, but it's just not there. It breaks at the end of Roman Britain and starts again with the Anglo-Saxons. So anyway, that's our walk, and I shall see you on the next one. I've just seen some deer on the horizon, so I'm going to very carefully get my zoom lens out and see if I can catch them before they scarper. See you later. Ta-ra for now.